All right, so I'm back from the maiden field day with the T-Rex 550X here. And so I mostly just wanted to talk about settings because I feel like this is one thing that can be a little confusing. So let's just talk about that real quick. So the Ikon flight controller has 4 different settings, and on I think it's page 9 of the programming, what it allows you to do is toggle. You can assign a 3-way switch and toggle through those settings, okay? And then there's a 4th section down on the bottom that a different switch can be assigned to, and that one is the one that you typically use for rescue and bailout. Okay, so let's just talk about the settings first. There's 4 different flight settings. There's beginner, sport, acro, and 3D. Now, just keep in mind that some people won't want to use any of the settings, that they just fly the flight controller, you know, linear type controls, and they don't use the settings. I like to use the settings. This comes down to pilot preference. Now, it could be said that by having those settings set up, you're taking away from the performance of the helicopter a little bit, and I could see that because it's softening up the controls and everything else. But for me, the way I see it is when I have it in normal mode, I'm just looking to fly around the field. I'm not trying to exploit the maximum capabilities of the servos and the motor, and I'm not flying it inverted, trying to mow the grass. I'm just flying it around the field. So by using those settings, it just makes the helicopter more docile and friendlier to fly. But here is the part that to me that still gets a little confusing, is that you've got the mode settings in the flight controller, but then you also have dual rates and expos in the remote. And the answer is that you can use them together. It's not one or the other. You can use both. Now, I don't know how much you want to get into adjusting the dual rates with that, but the expo settings is just fine. You can add expo settings in your remote on top of the profile settings in the flight controller, right? So the way I have this set up is right now I've got it separate. So when this switch is in the C switch is in the 2 position, you're in the top selection, and you're in sport mode, which is just 1 level above beginner. Okay, now I will assign that over here to my flight mode switch, and that'll be for normal mode. Now in normal mode in the remote, I have 30% expo. Okay, so when I'm in normal mode, I'll be in sport in the flight controller, and I'll have the remote adding 30% expo. So that's going to make the helicopter very docile. That's why you see it flying around like this, where it's very capable of being much more powerful. And the third item that's tied into the switch is your throttle curve, right? And so in normal mode, I've got my throttle curve set at 70%, right? So again, I'm not exploiting the power of the helicopter. I'm increasing the longevity of the battery, and I'm making it easier to fly, okay? So then we bump it up to stunt 2. In stunt 2, the throttle curve changes, and it's 70% straight across, right? So there's no zero, it's just 70% all the way across. And when I was doing the test flight, I call it an operational check flight, I want to see that when I switch from normal to stunt 1, there's no change. That tells me that the remote and the receiver and the speed control are in sync. If they're in sync perfectly and they're both set to 70, when I flip that mode switch, there'll be no change, and there wasn't, right? And so I can kind of change those things up later, but those are like where I like to start from. So flip it to stunt 1, and there's no change in the RPM, but there is a change in the flight controller. When you switch to stunt 1, I will have it tied to the stunt switch. You will come out of sport and go into acrobatic, right? And so that is going to change the way the helicopter flies. The flight controller is now going to have less you know, it's not as soft. The acrobatic mode is more sharp, it's more crisp, it's more taking advantage of the flight controls that the servos can, the power of the servos. The other thing that's going to happen is on the remote, with my exponential settings in here, I go down to 20% when I go to stunt 1. Okay, so stunt 1, normal mode to stunt 1, we don't see a change in RPM, but we do see a change in the way the helicopter handles, right? And so for me, this is for my basic 3D. Basic 3D rolls, flips, you know, doing all that sort of stuff. It's different than normal mode, okay? It's going to make the helicopter respond more, you know, just more differently. So if I'm just out and I'm just running it around the field doing a big, almost like an airplane pattern, it's going to be easier to fly in normal mode. Now, can I fly it like that with, you know, in 3D? Yeah, sure, you can. But what happens is when you're in 3D mode, the helicopter, it's much more powerful. It's exploiting the full capabilities of the servos and everything else. So if you get the thing 200 yards away from you rolling into a corner and you just give it a little bit too much, the helicopter might roll over on you. So it just makes it more touchy to fly. If you're just trying to do basic maneuvers, I like to just have a normal mode. I mean, why not? You've got these mode switches, you've got these controls. Why not use them? That's me. That's the way I choose to set the helicopter up. And the last when we go up is stunt 2. When I go into stunt 2, my throttle curve is going to jump to 80%. Okay, so we're going to see an increase in throttle. My mode setting in my flight controller is going to go to 3D, which is the most aggressive setting in the flight controller, and my expo settings in my remote goes down to 10%, right? And so now we're really getting into the verge of full capabilities of the helicopter. So if I'm going to attempt to bring it down and like hover it upside down near the ground, I want to be in stunt 2, where I've got real precise control and I can really bring it down to where I want it, and the helicopter, but you're burning down your battery faster. The helicopter is more touchy. If I'm trying to fly it upside down and bring it down low to the ground, I want to have that kind of control. So that's what my stunt 2 is for. Now bump back down to stunt 1, and now it drops down to 70% RPMs. We go back a notch in the flight controller from acrobatic or from 3D to acrobatic. And we go from 10% expo in the remote to 20% expo in the remote. You know, the helicopter becomes much more docile, but is still fully capable of flipping upside down and doing 3D. In normal mode, it's not capable of flipping upside down and doing 3D because I've got the throttle curve set up where I can bring it down and the motor will stop. So, now, I have been kind of tempted to, you know, possibly just have the minimum in normal mode and then just use the hold switch. But the minimum at 50%, like in hold, or 70%, and just use the hold switch. But it kind of takes away a safety. I'd rather have the normal mode where the throttle curve goes all the way down to 0. That way, when I'm got it on the bench or anything else, I've got 2 safeties. My throttle is down to 0. The helicopter will not spin up, even if it's not in hold mode. And then I've got my hold switch over here, so it's in hold mode. Those are my 2 safeties whenever I'm not flying. That's where the remote should be. And in the event that you bump this one, the hold switch will back you up. In the event that you bump the hold switch off, that will back you up. And so that's the way I choose to set the remote up. All right, so this is page 13 of the Ikon programming, and I just want to take a look at this and show you how this works. I've got my C switch assigned in position 0, 1, 2, and the way the Ikon works is it allows you to toggle through these.
Stability high angle, stability low angle.
Unfortunately, my remote does not have a vocalization for sport, acro, and 3D. So I've got this called stability low angle, stability high angle, and agility mode. Okay, and so what I can do is I can switch through the three of them with this one switch. Okay, now, like I said, when I first set up a helicopter, I keep them separate, but what I'll probably do is pin them back over to the mode switch after I figure out which one I like in which mode. Okay, but if we take a step back to the rescue page, page 11 of the programming, what you'll see is that you're also toggling through the rescue options. Now, I don't want auto level or rescue on my flight modes normally, like when I'm flying. So I can flip through these stunt modes, through these flight modes. Now, if you really wanted to, what you could do is you could put auto level on your lowest setting, like say on sport or beginner. You can put it in auto level so that when it's in normal mode, it also auto levels itself. And what I notice when it's flying is if auto level is on and you're giving it like a forward command, it will and then you let off, it will very aggressively like stop there, almost like GPS hold. It's not GPS hold, but it's definitely noticeably different. If it's going right and you just let off the stick, it instantly tries to stop it where it's at if it's in self level. So if you wanted to, you can go back to the self level, auto level and rescue page, and you can add those things to your normal flight modes as you toggle through them. Or, and this is the way I set it up, there's a separate switch for this fourth page here, right? And so you'll see I've got it assigned to the A switch. Self level. And now it turns green down here, okay? So when I flip that switch, I'm currently in the 3D mode for the flying, but I've also activated this fourth item here, and I've got auto level set up on it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate rescue, and then we see our rescue pitch duration is set to 0.6 seconds. I'm just going to leave it there and see how that goes. That's like the factory setting. So when I played with this today on the original, or when I played with this the other day on the maiden flight, I only had self level set up, but I just turned on rescue for 0.6 seconds. And now normal mode, I turn it off, right? So now rescue is not on. Now, so as I was saying, the three flight modes as I toggle through them over here, stability high angle, stability low angle, they don't have self level or rescue associated with them. And then we go back to the rescue page. When I flip this A switch, self level, it activates this fourth channel, and now I have self level and rescue activated when I flip this switch. So that's how you set up the switches in the Ikon to toggle through your flight modes. I'm using sport, acrobatic, and 3D. This is in normal mode. Stability high angle. This is what I use when I'm in stunt 1. Agility mode. And this is what I use in stunt 2. I found that I pretty much like that. I could eliminate sport. I don't know. I'm going to do a little more pattern flying with it. If I like the pattern flying good enough with the acro, then I may just eliminate sport. But I'll compare the two against each other when I do some more pattern flying with it and see which one I like, if I like them better. Stability low angle. So as I toggle through the flight modes, I don't have self level or rescue activated, although I could if I wanted to. Not really rescue, because that would only jump up for 0.6 seconds where it's set here, or you could raise it, and after that self level just stays on and it just aggressively stops the helicopter wherever you let off the controls. So if you were just learning to hover, you might put it in beginner and keep auto level on to help you out, and then have your stunt 1 just not have auto level on. You could do that. Or you can do like this, where you've got your auto level set up on basically like a rescue type of switch.
Self-level.
And now I'm in this flight mode here, sport, but I've activated my 4th channel here. And so self-level is coming on, and it's going to also rescue, which is raise the helicopter up for 0.6 seconds. So that's how you set up the flight modes and how you can toggle through them. And again, like I was saying, you can do that individually on its own switch, or you can just tie those in with your flight mode switch that you already have, which I'll probably do shortly. It gives me good longevity of the battery if I want to fly it in mode 1. Now today we flew two 4500s and a 5000. So the other thing before I do a maiden flight is I like to do like an operational check flight, where I just went to a parking lot up the road. It was a Sunday, there was nobody there, and just hover the helicopter and make sure everything works right. Switch from normal mode to stunt 1 to stunt 2. Make sure it makes the transitions right. Make sure everything is doing what you want it to do. Now, when I did the throttle calibration on it, I came back in and looked it over. One of the ball links was loose. Totally my fault. I forgot to put Loctite on it, and I just missed it. Now, if I had taken it to the field and I had it upside down and I was, running battery packs through it, that ball link could have let go. And what could have happened from there, who knows? So I like to do like little operational check flights, 2 or 3 of them, just make sure the helicopter hovers right. I make sure my tail is locked in. Turn, hit the rudder, get the tail to move, and then let off and make sure it stops. And the other thing, fly it back at you with the tail, nose out, and see what happens with your tail. To me, if it's going to get squirrely, that's where it's going to do it. If I can bring that tail back at me at a pretty good speed, I know it's going to hold up pretty well as I put it through some bigger maneuvers. But at the same time, if it gets, out of control, I can still recover it, because it's basically just a little hover flight. So I did the throttle calibration day. I just flew it a little bit, and then I did 2 of those little operational check flights on it. Neither one of the operational check flights, anything else came back loose. None of the pre-flight, post-flight today, none of the bolts came back loose. Everything was good. So the helicopter is flying great. I put 3 packs through it today. Those are the settings I have in the remote. I'm going to leave the settings the way they are for now, but I wouldn't doubt that down the road, I'll probably go up a little bit on my stunt 2 to probably 85 or 90. And, those settings will evolve. I don't put them in there with the expectation that that's how it's going to be forever. But, that's how I like to fly the helicopter for the first time, and go around and play with it. Maybe I will take the sport out and I'll just do the acrobatic on normal and stunt 1, because, I didn't really think the sport was that needed, and I thought the acrobatic was okay to fly in. But as I'm getting used to the helicopter more and more, I'll look a little more closely at those things. The last thing I played around with today was Bailout. Rescue. Okay. So on the FBL page, again, I believe it's programming page 9, there's a 4th section down at the bottom. That section is separate from the first 3, and you toggle it on or off. And that's where I have my rescue set up. And it works pretty well. I mean, the helicopter, if it's sideways or whatever and you pull the rescue, it straightens right out. And while the rescue is on, if you tell the helicopter to go forward and then you let off, like, it immediately stops. The rescue really stabilizes the helicopter. Today was the first time I really played with it, and it worked you know, it worked pretty good. I'm going to go back in, check the other box for bailout, and then you can control the number of seconds the bailout is active to raise the helicopter. And I'm just going to start with 2 seconds and see how that goes. So that'll be in an upcoming video. But maiden flight today, video number 1. Those are the settings that I used on the helicopter. That's how I have it all set up. If you're not familiar with the 550, you push this little button in the front and the tray releases. These trays, you know, they Velcro on. I like to put sticky Velcro on the battery and the tray so that the battery cannot slide out, and then use this Velcro that adheres. So that's the way I like to set the battery trays up. Now, I found that when I did the CG, putting the batteries this forward on the tray is, you know, what made the helicopter hang much closer to level. Now, right now with these battery packs, it's still just a little bit tail low, but I'm going to be putting this in, which is a Pulse Defender. And this thing is a little bailout in case you have a ESC failure or a battery failure. This thing will power the helicopter long enough for you to, you know, get it down and land it. Whereas if you have a failure on one of these two, you have a complete power loss, you crash your helicopter. This guy here will kind of save you. It's got a little light attached to it. So I haven't had a chance to install it yet. That's the only thing I have left to do. But that's it. 3 flights today. The helicopter flew really good. I'm super happy with it. I didn't have any issues at the field flying it. Nothing came up in the pre or the post flights. These batteries were at 5 minutes. We're flowing right down to storage capacity, so that's pretty cool. I like these little battery indicator things, so I know which ones are charged and which ones are dead. These are good to get. But what's nice is, like I said, at the 5 minute mark, these batteries are just down to storage capacity. So now I can just leave them until I want to fly the helicopter again, charge the batteries back up, and it's good to go. So there it is, T-Rex 550X maiden flight. Super happy with it. Can't wait to get it out there and put it through the paces. Try Bailout. I haven't done Bailout yet, so I'll tie Bailout to that rescue switch. And also the telemetry. Looking forward to pushing it and seeing what kind of speed we can get out of it. Today, obviously, we got some telemetry data. I'm not sure what it is yet because the computer is still scanning it. I'm going to guess probably 45 miles an hour. Somewhere in that. Yeah, I would say 40, 45 miles an hour. And, but I think I can get this thing up to 65, 70, you know, but first I wanted to go through everything. I want to get my Pulse Defender installed. I want to get everything squared away and just get a couple little flight sessions out of it before I start pushing it. Don't forget to check out the channel, fly GoPros off the helicopters and get telemetry data on the speed, first person view of the helicopters. It's pretty neat, kind of something I've always wanted to do. Again, got to give a shout out to Chris Rybert, who has helped me a lot with getting the helicopters set up. I was able to pretty much set this one up on my own, but he really helped me out a lot with my previous helicopters. I wouldn't have been able to do it without his help. And Align Gale from the forum has helped me out along the way and some of these things and setting some of these things up. And of course, got to mention Brian Birdsong, who makes these camera mounts. If you're interested in flying cameras, you know, I am Brian Birdsong. He makes a great product. I like to just put a zip tie around it and zip tie it onto the track there. But I've had these helicopters, I've had my 650 12S setup inverted or going by at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. This thing doesn't even budge. So really nice camera mounts, really easy to use. And there it is, the T-Rex 550X. Can't wait to get out and do some more flying with it.